Hello, and welcome to the second season of The Messy Middle. I'm your host, Laura Cook, and I'm excited to bring you an amazing set of podcasts this year. I've paired up with other Dare to Lead certified facilitators to explore important topics such as resilience, shame, trust, self awareness, and more. I can't wait to share these with you. Last week, I kicked off the series with a session on resilience. I had the honor of speaking with Kathy Ball-Tonsick. Kathy brings 25 years experience applying organizational learning and leadership skills as an executive coach and a senior leader. She leverages her own extensive experience from inside the corporate world to guide leaders towards achieving exceptional results and emotional mastery, both individually and organizationally. Prior to creating the 262 Group Inc., Kathy held senior roles on Wall Street, leading global teams to drive revenue across Fortune 100 firms. Clients describe Kathy as honest, focused, insightful, compassionate, and supportive. They experience her leadership as courageous and heartfelt. In addition to all of this, Kathy has a keen interest in volunteerism and sits on the board of directors for the Title IX Girls, a nonprofit organization. She's an executive coach volunteer for the Social Innovation Forum. She was a Woman of the Year nominee for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and helped raise money for charity while training for and running 10 marathons. An avid chef, she is also a world traveler and sports enthusiast. She lives in Boston, Massachusetts with her family. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here to speak with me about resilience. So, the first thing I kind of wanted to ask, just so we can level set, is what is resilience? How do you define resilience?
Yeah, I thought a lot about that. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to start with what it's not. Sometimes I like to back into what something is. And especially now, to see what it looks like when we're low on resilience, and that's burnout. You can't open up anything right now and not read about burnout. It's epic right now. And sometimes people don't even realize that they are either dangerously close or actually in burnout, or maybe they just don't know how to recognize it and name it. And fun fact, did you know that burnout was recently classified by the WHO as an actual disease?
Wow.
I read that and I was like, wow, okay, so we should be paying attention more. And it's actually defined as a syndrome that is conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been managed. And to me, that just starts talking about what resilience is, because it's basically that description is fancy for lack of resilience.
Mm.
Um, Exhaustion can be subtle at the beginning. You may not even notice it. It's a big warning sign, a big telltale, as are things like panic attacks. A lot of research shows that it's not about the challenge or the stress of your job that predicts burnout, but it's actually simple things like the absence of someone to talk to about that challenge or that stress. So then, if that's burnout, what's resilience? Well, resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks. And setbacks, especially now in 2021, early 2021, those aren't ifs. They aren't if I have a setback, they're when. When
Mm.
will my next setback be? So if we can learn and gain resilience to really bounce back from those setbacks, we are so much better positioned to avoid burnout. So, unlike burnout, which takes away from our ability to execute on things, to actually feel emotions that we want to feel, resilience can actually positively influence outcomes, either at work, at home, at anywhere. It can even reduce depression. And one of the best ways, and it's going to sound so simple, like, whoa, why didn't I think of that? But interactions with others is one of the best and easiest straightforward paths to resilience. But you know what? That's really hard right now.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something you just said reminds me of the Gallup model for employee engagement, and how one of the key questions is, I have they call it a best friend at work, but
Yeah.
having that person that you can kind of just bounce off ideas or to de-escalate if you're feeling stressed with. So that's a component, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, when we get to sort of things that you as individuals can do to build your own resilience, that's going to be a key factor in that.
Hmm. Talking about there not ever being a normal, quote unquote, normal again, resilience and that bounce back factor, I think, will become increasingly important. And it sounds to me, based on what we talked about with burnout, that self care is a component of that, but there's also some other things. So it's not, resilience doesn't equal going to the spa or taking a nap, but what else kind of builds resilience? What else qualifies resilience?
Yeah, and you might get tired of hearing me say this, but psychological safety holds a big key to this. If we don't feel safe at work, at home, at anywhere, um, it's so hard to build resilience. And by safe, I mean, safe enough to share our thoughts, share our feelings, our concerns without being or feeling judged, and without everybody around us feeling, oh, Kathy's feeling this way. I need to fix her. Let me go fix Laura next. That doesn't create psychological safety. The other piece is empathy. And there's a lot of information on empathy, but that plays a huge role in resilience for both ourselves and for others. And I know empathy is a big word. We can read about it everywhere. I think the piece for me that helps me tune into empathy and helps others understand what it is and isn't. Because people say, well, what if I don't agree with what they're saying? We don't actually have to connect to the situation that someone is feeling or talking about, just the feeling that they're having. So if they're talking about something that makes them afraid, maybe for you, you'd be like, that would be fun for me. Okay, but have you ever felt afraid? Like,
Mhm.
raise your hand. We've all felt afraid. All I need to do is connect to the fear that that person is feeling. And that's what empathy looks like.
Yeah, thank you. And so, for somebody who's looking to practice resilience, do you think that bounce back time gets shorter as we practice? Because I find that sometimes I'm feeling burnt out for a long period of time versus the ability to bounce quickly and kind of regroup and jump back in.
Yeah, what a great question. And I'm going to give you an answer that might be a little frustrating, but I'm going to say yes and sometimes. So, yes, it's like going to the resilience gym, right? The first time you go to a gym, you can't walk over and pick up a 100-pound weight. Well, maybe some people can. I can't. But if I start at 10 and work that, and then I can go to 20 and then 30, I need to build quickly. And then I go back to that 10-pound weight. The first time it's like, whoa, this is easy now, right? So, we can build new neural pathways in our brains and messages for our own self talk that say things like, I've been here before. I don't like the way it feels. I do have strategies to move to something different. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean we discount how we're feeling in the moment, even if we have huge amounts of resilience. It does mean that we have a little voice up here that says, you've been here before, girl. You know what to do. Take your time, find your map, and then move gently through whatever's happening right now.
Yeah, good stuff. It reminds me, I just finished training in the hardiness resilience gauge. And what it does is kind of decipher between resilience, which is the ability to bounce back, and hardiness, which is the ability to endure over time. And I think
Yeah.
that's a little bit about what we're going through right now. It's not a one and done, it's not an event and a recovery. It's continual wave of ups and downs over, more than a year at this point for us.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I think you probably know, but I've run a whole bunch of marathons in my life, and what you just said is you need to be hardy and you need to be resilient, right? So we're in it for the long haul, and there are so many milestones along the way that we need to just keep reminding ourselves why we're here, what our plan is, and what the next right step is. It's a great,
Mhm.
great point.
Nice. So is there then a connection to purpose and resilience? Because I heard the why
Totally.
we're here. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so that's part of what we can do to build our own resilience. So it's not something that we don't get tested for resilience. It's not inner grit, like you said. It's not this hardiness of I can do this. Sure, that's part of the equation, but the other parts are things like courage, curiosity, and as you mentioned before, self awareness. And it's these sort of fuzzy zones. People who love binary things. Resilience isn't binary. It's not that you either have it or you don't. It's, as this is called, it is in that messy middle. And part of that mess is if I make a mess, I stick around to clean it up, right? So purpose is in there too, because if I know, let's go back to my example of a marathon. I run marathons for charity. So I have a very deep purpose every time I go to the starting line. I also think I'm crazy because often driving out there, it's like, man, this is a long way to drive. Why am I going to run this far? But I remember that I'm doing it to raise funds for cancer research. And I think of the children that I visited during my fundraising, and I know what a difference it might make in their lives. And suddenly, the little bit of pain I'm feeling, it's like, okay, but I can do this. Sure, it might not even go away until I take care of myself tomorrow, but it reminds me why I'm here doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So during this pandemic, if we can remember why we wake up every day and get dressed and put on a smile, even if we're not going somewhere, or don't
Mhm.
put on a smile, but keep moving, like what's the why for
Mhm.
each of us, is exactly what you said. So purpose can be a lot of fuel, and it doesn't need to be a grandiose purpose. Maybe my
Mhm.
purpose today was, let me just get up, find one thing to be grateful for, get two things done, and eat one healthy meal. Bam. And
Yeah.
understand why I'm doing that.
Yeah. Good stuff. I was just reading up on the Deloitte Human Capital Trends for 2021, and they kind of broke it down into three things, and it was purpose, potential, and perspective. So those are
Yeah.
the three things that are kind of driving this year. And so it's interesting how this conversation around resilience has kind of evolved and aligned with what they're saying is the future of work for this year or the focus for this year.
Yeah, and that you just touched on another thing that we as individuals can do, which is I call it my personal board of directors. It's your crew, your squad. Who are those people that you can turn to and say, Laura, I am having a horrible day, whatever it is, but make sure there's some diversity on that board of directors of yours so that you can get different perspectives, right? Because if I just keep talking to myself, even if it's journaling, I can have the most wonderful spiritual practices, but if I'm not sharing it with other people, I'm going to be stuck in my own perspective of the way I see the world. And we all know that this is when it's a beautiful thing that we all have a different lens into the world. So get perspective on that personal board of directors. Figure out your own resilience needs. I love laughing. Laughing helps me just move from being stuck somewhere to feeling great or feeling
Mhm.
better, even. But for
Yeah.
some people, it's I need a quiet moment. For someone else, it's I need a good book or a deep conversation with someone. Figure out what it is for you
Mhm.
and go find that.
Yeah. I think that's helpful. So for people who are trying to think about how to build that resilience in ourselves is if we can think back to a time where we've gone through something difficult, what brought us comfort or what helped us move beyond being stuck in the difficulty to taking a step forward, maybe.
Absolutely. And try it. It may work,
Yeah.
it may not, but it's part of your earlier question. As we build these skills, we get to sort of keep a mental running checklist. that worked really well. That not so much. I got on a Zoom call with a bunch of friends the other night, and we played a game called Code Names, which is really fun. We were on the call for 2 hours. I think we only got through 3 games, but that's because, and we've known each other for a really long time. It's because we told so many jokes and laughed, and I hung up and I was like, wow, I really miss that in my life. That connection with friends, that laughter, that shared joy together. So, yeah, anytime that we can figure that out, and then I can write that down. Like, if I'm feeling low, I'll organize the next game, right? And that
Mhm.
goes on my mental running checklist of things that, like you just said, help me gain a little more resilience. And every time I do that, I feel like I sort of contribute to my own stores of resiliency so that when the next thing happens, I've got something in the tank and to rely on.
Yeah, that's great. I'll have to look up that game and post some information in the show notes if anyone wants to try that with their friends.
Oh, it's really fun, and there's a free online version of it, and it's both fun and it's challenging enough that it gets your brain engaged in a good way, but it's
Yeah,
also really fun.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, taking a leadership lens now, how do leaders help their team build resilience? How, as
Yeah,
a leader, can I help my team through, the times that we're going through, or setbacks or challenges?
that's a great question. And I mentioned psychological safety earlier, and I recently heard an expression that really resonated with me, which is creating a psychological sense of community.
Mm,
Right. And in community, you can hear what we were just talking about, that network of yours, those people that can support you when you're having a tough time. And that really is the heart of resiliency. We are not wired to go this alone,
mm,
right? So it's not an I project, it's a we project across the board. So, what leaders can do is, they can do things within the culture to create that safety, to help people thrive when they're feeling really low, or even get back to a base level where they feel good. And by the way, I want to make sure that we all are sort of level set around psychological safety. I don't mean being nice,
mm,
right? Psychological safety doesn't mean I create a culture where everybody's nice to each other, because underneath nice is being afraid to really show up. So I'm
mm,
talking about creating an environment where people will speak up, where they feel okay being themselves exactly who they are, where they can admit mistakes, and where they can offer honest feedback. And that, those are 4 simple things, but they're not easy things. So for leaders to set that up, they really need to walk their talk. They
mm.
need to be able to say, you guys, I'm not an expert at this. I'm going to get 3 other people's opinions on this, and let's talk about it. Or even, hey, Laura, I know you have expertise in this. I know I'm head of this company, but will you own this piece? And they need to say when something hasn't gone the way that they intended it to. So it's not about falling on your sword and, saying, oh my gosh, I made a terrible mistake, but it's about saying, hey, that didn't go the way I wanted it to. I'm sorry for any impact. I'm going to stick around. We're going to figure this out. I don't have the answer right now, but we're going to figure it out. I'm watching our governor here in Massachusetts. We have not had a smooth rollout of the vaccines. And he is, I just saw a picture of the poor guy with his head on fire.
Mm,
Okay, people are not happy. Yeah, they're unhappy that the rollout hasn't gone well. You know what they're really unhappy about? That he has not once stood up and said, sorry guys, I did not do this right. I've called in some new experts. We are going to figure this out. We are going to make it better.
so part of resilience as a leader is admitting our mistakes and making it right when maybe we don't do it perfectly the first time.
Because no one does, and every time we do
Yeah.
that, we just give other people permission to try something new, to innovate, to be creative, and not necessarily get it right. I love the expression of when we don't get it right, we either learn or we win.
Mm,
Right?
mhm.
So either we did get it right and we win or we learn. Like there's
Yeah.
no fail in there. We tried something, but if I don't show you that I tried something and it didn't work, so we're going to reset and we're going to figure it out. This whole idea of building resiliency in organizations, it's a team sport.
So modeling that is probably one of the key things leaders can do to encourage others to also lean into it.
Yeah, and they can also do simple things like they can have town halls and they can actually listen to what their people are saying. They can create short check ins, even if it's 5 minutes. So I have office hours once a week on Mondays from 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. Come grab 5 minutes with me. I am here, even if it's just to tell me that you are struggling because you're at home with three small children who aren't in school. You're trying to work. Your husband's in the next room. He's trying to work. Yeah, and be willing to listen to that.
Mhm.
And checking in with people, asking them, so how are you doing? Do you feel that you can speak up around here? Is there something in your way of being able to ask for what you need right now? That's a
Mm.
gift to give someone that to say, well, no, actually, I'm not.
Yeah. I just worked with a project team that was kicking off for a fairly large project. And one of the things we explored as part of building the team was understanding what support looks like for each of them.
Yes.
And that's just such a small and yet simple and powerful thing you can do to say, here's what stresses me out, here's what support looks like for me.
Yeah. And what I love about that, Laura, is that ask 10 people and it looks different for all 10 people, where we might assume that I know what support looks like, right? It means doing it for you. It means not doing it for you. It means doing it halfway for you. It means telling you how to do it, right?
Yeah.
And if we, it's such a simple thing to ask. What does support look like for you?
Yeah.
And then the key for leaders is listen to what the person said. Sure, you
Yeah.
might make up what you think, but be willing to be surprised. Be curious about their response and help them feel heard. Acknowledge that they said, actually, support right now is me starting work an hour later every day.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Tell me how that would help you. I really want to understand that. Maybe there are other people that would feel helped like that.
Yeah, very true. It reminds me of the love languages. We typically give how we like to receive, but it's,
Yes.
often not received in a way that is meaningful to the other person. So understanding what is a good tool. I think we talked quite a little bit about what people can do to build their resilience to help recover from a setback. Is there anything else that perhaps we didn't cover that you'd like to share?
No, I think just this whole idea of we talked about your squad, your personal board of directors, and just challenging yourself to figuring out how you could expand that network of yours, especially now when we're all really isolated from each other. Because if our network, in fact, carries that lifeblood for us and offers us resilience, then how can we grow it? How can we make our the blood coursing through our veins even more hearty? And again, it can be really subtle. I'm reminded of another quick story. I'm a big tennis fan, and I was watching the Australian Open. And if you watch any big tennis match, when the players are having a tough time, they look to their box. And who's in their box? It's their network, it's their supporters. No one says anything. It's actually illegal to coach from the box. They're trying to change that, but right now it's illegal. No one's saying anything. Why are they looking there? They're looking there to remember I have support. I'm not in this alone. I don't have to do it alone. And it's no more than that glance that brings them very often the power, the reminder, the purpose that they needed to shift their game back to the way they want to play. It was so powerful for me when I watched it through this new lens of like, wow, they're creating their own resilience in that hot minute.
That's amazing. I like that. Are there any other resources or tools you would recommend in terms of exploring one's own resilience or digging deeper into this subject?
Yeah, I would say, there's so many books, articles, podcasts about vulnerability and courage. I know one of our favorites, Laura, is Brene Brown. That's a great place to start. But there are so many resources on those two topics. And while they're not talking about resilience in and of itself, those underlie resilience. And self compassion. Right? Like you said earlier, self care, maybe not going to the spa, but caring for me as a human so that I have the resiliency to care for other people. So, simple meditations, 5 minutes of a self compassion meditation. Kristen Neff is a great resource for that. Or moments of gratitude. I don't have it right here, but I have a little gratitude jar. And I just write it on a paper and put it in there. And it just reminds me of all that I have going on, which isn't to say I have to discount things that are bothering me right now. It's
Yeah.
just helping me fill my resilience tank. And again, I can't say this enough. Most importantly, just reach out to other people. We're proving nothing by going it alone.
Yeah, it's so important to have that connection. I just wanted to show you, like, in my daily, here's my gratitude.
Aw,
So in my
and a
to-do
heart.
list, I draw a little heart and I write 3 things I'm grateful for each day, and it's helpful.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And whatever, even if you just say it out loud or say it to yourself, just find that moment to check in with yourself. We're so busy. We're all running around and we forget just to pause and check in with this heart right here.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, I'd like to move into kind of the 3 questions I like to ask all my guests, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Yeah. So the first one is, what do you think is the most important thing for leaders to know or do right now?
Do I get to say be resilient?
Yeah, sure.
I would say right now, self awareness is critical. So, self awareness is one of the biggest components of emotional intelligence. And if we're not paying attention right now to what's happening in our organizations, and whether you're a leader of a huge company, a small startup, a not for profit, your family, your community, anything, we need to be aware of how we're feeling and how others around us are feeling. It's always important, Laura, but right now more than ever.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. What self care practice is currently bringing you balance?
Oh, I think I named a few of them when we were speaking. My gratitude practice for sure. I meditate every morning, and on super busy days, 10 minutes. Really, it's just a question of sitting down and getting quiet. And I love running or walking or just moving. So if I'm really feeling stuck, as long as I live in Boston, so weather is iffy this time of year, but I just make sure that I find a way to move my body.
Excellent. Thank you. So finally, I find I have a long list of leadership and development books that I would like to read, and I just can never get to them all. So, what I'm asking my guests to share is, what are you digging into right now? And can you give us some cold notes or a key learning from one of the books that you're reading currently?
Yeah, so funny. I just got 3 new books in the mail yesterday, and it was a surprise. And one of them that I'm so excited to read. And Laura, if you could see the pile next to my bed, and I keep wishing that having them there means that I've actually read them, but it doesn't work out that way, it turns out. But this one, Think Again, it's
Mm,
by Adam Grant. And it's all about that we can learn no matter what age we are, right? We can forever learn. And what we need to remember is that learning is a skill that we can improve upon. Unlearning is also a skill.
mm,
And I think it circles back beautifully to resilience because it's having the self awareness to say, I don't know about this.
Mm.
I'd love to learn. Who was taught to say that when they were young? I don't know. you know,
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
taught to sort of hide when we don't know and raise your hand boldly when you do know. So it's a great read. Actually, Brene Brown is quoted on the back cover, so so therefore it must be a good read. And just about that, sure, we need to focus to learn, but we really need to focus to figure out what we need to unlearn so that
Hmm.
we can continue to learn.
That's wonderful. So I think we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate your time so much. I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and I've learned so much from you. And thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Laura. And I learned, and I was really grateful to get to dig into resilience a little bit more while I was preparing for this. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kathy.
Bye.